This is a download from the BBC. To download other programmes or for more information, go online.
bbc.co.uk/5live.
The legend Dino is in Rio. The top brass, the Lion of Leon, is in Birmingham, taking care of European football. And we've got the Cosa Nova in Moscow. Gennady, good morning. Good to speak to you, mate.
Good morning.
Gennady Fyodorov takes care of every question that you have on Russian football and footballers in Russia playing in our leagues as well. First question for you straight away, Gennady. With all the hype over the Russians, who were deservedly beaten last night, says Anthony, I'd like to know what happened to Marat Ismailov. He was the next big thing at Lokomotiv before moving to Sporting. How's he doing? Should he have been in the Russian squad for the Euros?
Well, that's the question most Russian fans wanted to know, but unfortunately, he kind of, as you know, he's playing in Portugal right now for Lisbon Sporting, and he's a very skillful player and was kind of held as a golden boy of Russian football, but unfortunately, he gets injured a lot, and he, every time, it seems like Gus Hiddink, Russia coach, wanted to invite him for a training camp. He was either injured or there was some personal commitments. So maybe that played a role or something else. But he was overlooked. And it's only. Now you can say whether. Would he help the Russian team or not? Now we would never know. But I think, as far as the talent, yes, he's one of the most talented Russian players.
Tim, from JFK in Chesham, QPR have just signed Emmanuel Jorge Ledesma, 20-year-old Argentinian from Genoa, and Alberti from Chievo. Perhaps Andy could answer this as well. What can you tell me about them?
I can't remember Ledesma. I'm just scratching my head to try and remember. There's so many Ledesmas around. It's like Zinhos in Brazil.
Look,
sorry, at the moment.
Even I've got a mate called Charles de Ledesma. Trust me.
Indeed. They're 10 a penny, these Ledesmas. But I wish him well anyway.
Okay, Andy, could you expand on that by any chance?
No, I've seen nothing of him either.
Okay, right. Okay, how about Alberti from Chievo?
No, I've seen nothing of him.
Let's go on to the next question then. This is from Kasim. I'm an avid follower of Serie A. Please, can you ask Tim about a couple of things? Serie A, can Ronaldinho complement Kaká and Pato at Milano AC? And how do you rate Zapata at Udinese? Well, Andy, do you want to go for that first?
I think it is looking more and more likely that Ronaldinho will end up there. Simply because I don't think he's got a lot of options. He's clearly Manchester City are very, very interested, but the delay in something happening there, despite the money being on offer, suggests that that's the move he's been holding out for, and has been holding out for the whole time. Milan are interested. He's interested in them. I guess it's just a case of Milan and Barcelona coming to a fee that causes neither of them to lose too much face.
This is a funny one. Hi guys, I've heard a rumour that Ronaldinho is considering a transfer to Major League Soccer. What's the legend Dino's opinion?
No, I don't think that's a viable thing. And his brother Assis is his agent, and his brother's a hard-headed man who was a child prodigy himself and made a big mistake with his career. He leapt at the first move, which was Switzerland. It turned out to be a disastrous move, and he lost his career, lost momentum, and he fairly soon he ended up the size of a rugby ball. He was so fat. So the one thing that Assis will not do is plunge in for the first offer that comes. And I think he's been using the Manchester City offer to try and flush out something else. With respect to Milan, well, obviously the Ronaldinho-Kaká partnership didn't work particularly well for Brazil in the World Cup. I think because they were just overloaded with the two of them plus two strikers. It was just a little bit overloaded there. It has, even subsequently, it has proved difficult for Brazil to fit them both into the same team. I think it probably can work, but I don't think there's any way that it will work with two strikers. It'll be the pair of them off one striker. We hope as football fans that at 28, Ronaldinho has still got a lot of football still to play because on form, motivated, he's an absolutely fantastic player. The second half of that question, Christian Zapata, who's a young Colombian centre-back at Udinese, I rate him extremely highly, and so do Colombia. He's been playing for Colombia. He played away to Peru in the World Cup qualifiers. He's a commanding centre-back with a little bit of quality about him. I rate him very highly. I think he's got a terrific future.
I think it's only fair, Gennady, to give you a little bit of history of the World Football phone-in. About this time 2 years ago, we had a question similar to the one about Ronaldinho going to Major League Soccer, and it said David Beckham going to Major League Soccer, and our US correspondent Sean Wheelock said there is absolutely no way David Beckham is ever going to come to Major League Soccer. That's by way of history. Now, Martin in Warrington wants to know, is there any talk in Russia of Pavel Luchenko moving to Celtic, and is he likely to come there?
Well, again, that's a question you asked me a few days ago. I haven't heard any more on that. There was some rumor earlier, but I guess now his team, his club, Spartak Moscow, is just holding on for maybe some bigger offers, and there were rumors that Spanish clubs, two top Spanish clubs, Real Madrid and Barcelona, were interested in him, maybe some Premier League clubs, English Premier League clubs. So I think the Spartak just kind of going to wait and bide time and wait for maybe some more offers for Pavlyuchenko, because certainly his stock is kind of rising. Also, can I ask one question now, Legendino?
Oh, yeah.
I want to ask you about Arshavin, Andrei Arshavin, obviously, who one player that caught the eye of most football fans for his play at the European Championship. As far as, his style, he's a very skillful player, but kind of a bit awkward and bow-legged. And doesn't that remind you of one Brazilian player that kind of was very, very skillful, technical, and made defenders, full defenders? But does it remind you a little bit? You know who I'm talking about?
Of Gahincha.
Yes.
Yeah, he does a little bit. In fact, it's 50 years since Gahincha exploded into the World Cup team. He came into Brazil's team for the third game in the 1958 World Cup. Against who? Against the USSR. And right. It's rated by many in Brazil, the first 5 minutes of that game is rated as some of the best football ever been played ever. Gahincha tormenting, I think it was Kuznetsov, the Russian fullback.
Fullback, right.
Absolutely tormented him with a sequence of dribbles, and afterwards Kuznetsov is rumoured to have said, that I don't know what sport we've been playing, but the true football is what the Brazilians play, and the Russians, the Soviet team visited the Brazilian camp the day after, bringing presents, and absolutely delighted to have been on the same field as Brazil and Gahincha. I wouldn't want to make a quick comment about Arshavin, who I think is a wonderful, wonderful talent. But I was saddened to see after the Holland game, Arshavin being asked and talking a lot about his future and wanting to go Barcelona and wanting to go here and wanting to go there. I was also a little bit saddened to see all the stuff about Luis Felipe Scolari going to Portugal, going to Chelsea, this coming out during the tournament. I think might have even been on the BBC website, said that this is the biggest story to come out of Euro 2008. Well, I tend to think that the biggest stories coming out of Euro 2008 are actually what's happening on the field in Euro 2008. And I just kind of wish that questions about club football are all left I know it's probably a naive wish, are all left for the end of the tournament, and while the tournament's on, everyone just focuses on the tournament. So I'd like to return the question by asking you, Gennady, if you thought that Arshavin's maybe concentration was in some way affected by being so much in a global spotlight after that wonderful performance against Holland.
It could have been, obviously. My guess is as good as yours, but I think as a whole, in a game against Spain in the semi-final, they kind of looked a bit running out of gas, and maybe the tank was empty. And I mean, it would be interesting to ask Gus Hiddink what actually happened with them, because they kind of were flat, and maybe was it? I don't think it was the fright stage that they kind of were too nervous, and because of a big stage, it was maybe it was physically they were kind of. Maybe they picked their pick was against Holland in the quarterfinals, and they were kind of already on the way down. Because actually, it surprised me. I was expecting them maybe at least physically to dominate Spain, because Spain kind of started the championship in a very kind of a big way, and they were looked a bit kind of tired against Italy, and but then certainly they turned the tables on the Russians. So it's hard to say. Maybe it was the talk of him moving to Barcelona, and actually, I read in the Russian press that somebody said that Spain already scored. Were already leading Russia 1-0 when they told Arshavin that Barcelona interested in him. So, and then he's going to play Spain. Obviously, well, maybe it was on his mind, maybe not, but they. Certainly, he wasn't the same player as against Holland.
Okay. If I can just briefly interject here.
You've got a question as well? Go on.
Yeah,
go on.
I really do. I think it's strange, the concept of Russia being tied, because of course the great advantage that their players have over all the other players at the European Championship is their season only started in March, so they should be relatively fresh. And of course, Arshavin himself, due to our good friend Ildefons Lima over in Andorra, is fresher than any. I would say the two words which describe why Arshavin couldn't impose himself in that semi-final: Marcos Senna, who has been one of the outstanding players so far of Euro 2008. Now, I know, Tim, you're not a great fan of the more defensive players. I won't mention that guy who plays for Arsenal, who you're not the biggest fan of. But
defensive midfielders, it's clearly a role. You have to win the ball in midfield, and you have to mark. So, I'm not anti-Gilberto Silva because I'm against defensive
How did you know
midfielders.
I was talking about him?
I have dartboards of Gilberto Silva at home, But don't get me started. Go on, make your point, Andy. Don't get me started on Gilberto Silva. I'll froth at the mouth.
If I can just ask you, Tim, how the performances of Marcos Senna have been received in Brazil?
Well, very, very highly, and people are coming to the same conclusion that you made in terms of his marking on Arshavin and his importance to the Spanish side. I think it's far easier to play in a midfield when you're surrounded with people who can pass the ball as well as people as those people in the Spanish midfield, which for me it's the outstanding part of the side. The way that when they're on form, the way that they can move the ball through midfield, and it was an absolutely fabulous pass from Fabregas for one of the goals against Russia. Just an absolutely fabulous player, and I think it makes it far easier, even for the defensive midfielder, if he's surrounded with talent and if the ball flows. But in general, there are lots of Brazilians playing. In the final, Kevin Corani is Brazilian-born, playing in the German squad, and of course Marcos Senna and other Brazilians as well, including the interesting case of Mehmet Aurelio, or Marcos Aurelio, as he was here, and he is a fascinating case, the defensive midfielder there for Turkey, because if you look at his age, he was born in December of 1977. If you look at his age in his registration in Brazil, he was born in 1979. Oops, there's a thing.
Sorry, can I have a quick response to Andy about Russia having an advantage because their season kind of in the mid-season, and everybody else is almost like end of the season, and they should be fresh rather than tired. Actually, that Gus Hiddink was asked that same question, at least in the Russian media, after Holland game, because obviously Russians will look much fresher and kind of overrun the Dutch. And he was asked, was it because of Dutch season was kind of a long season and the Russians were just beginning? And he said they had absolutely, to him, it had absolutely no effect. He said the Dutch players, after their season, they had a week off. They rested a week, and after that, he said they had a 3-week training camp. And he said while he was the Dutch coach 10 years ago, he said, I mean, training them for 3 weeks, they could have been kind of again gaining up all their energy and kind of be refreshed. So that in his opinion, again, it's not mine, in his opinion, that will have no effect for Russian season kind of in mid-season, and everybody else is having a long season, and that's why. So just wanted to clarify the issue.
Any other clarification points that want to be made in the next couple of minutes? We've only got an hour of the programme to go. 0500 9. As great as it is to listen to you guys, other people want to talk to you as well. But you have sparked off the text messages, and I'll just read this quickly before we go to the calls. Arshavin definitely lost his way against Spain because he was trying to impress too much and trying too hard instead of passing. He was trying to catch the limelight, says one of our listeners. Mo in Manchester goes for the humorous touch. He says the next big thing, Andrei Arshavin has gone missing. He was last seen at 7:45 p.m. in Vienna on Thursday. And just a quick note on what you were saying about Ronaldinho's bro. Joe in Bedford says Ronaldinho's bro quit football because he fell into depression due to the accidental tragic death of one of his close friends at his house. That's why he became fat and probably why he's so ruthless.
No, that's his father.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, well, perhaps it's a factor, but certainly he himself doesn't make it too much of a factor.
Okay, Gary in Belfast, good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on.
Pleasure.
First of all, to Andy, what do you think of the probable transfer of Hatem Ben Arfa to Marseille? Because it seems initially that Lyon has scored a major own goal in selling him to their biggest rivals, but I think that the signings they've made of Makoun, Ederson, Larson, Pjanic will ensure that they become champions again next season.
Yeah, well, it's not quite a done deal yet. There's some few issues existing between Lyon and the player himself before the deal's going to be complete. So it's stalling at the moment. I have to say I think Lyon completely know what they're doing in this case. Ben Arfa did start last season very, very well. But I think he's often rather lazily grouped with Karim Benzema because of their they're both born in 1987. They came up through the same France representative sides, and they're both from North African parentage. However, I think there's very little comparison. Benzema got in the first team later, but he showed a lot more maturity. He's adapted far quicker. Ben Arfa still has difficulties adapting to the group dynamic, I think. In flashes, he looks absolutely fantastic. He's proved that for France as well as for Lyon in the Champions League. But still, he causes problems in the dressing room. There's no doubt about that. And he still has difficulties. I don't think he really knows when to pass the ball. That's something that will come with experience, hopefully, for him.
A question for the Cosanova from Ashton, Cambridge. On the TV commentary for the semi-final, it was mentioned that the Russian left-back Yuri Zhirkov had claimed to have agreed a deal with Manchester United. Could your Russian correspondent shed any light on this?
Actually, to be honest with you, I haven't heard that one. And obviously, the Russian team just arrived in Moscow on Friday night, and there was... his club, CSKA Moscow, is at least his former club, CSKA. If he's saying he already signed for Manchester, but they're kind of the ones that don't like to discuss transfer talks or any news with the press, and most of the time they announce it like after the deal is done. So far, I haven't seen anything. I haven't read anything in the papers. So. I mean, that's kind of, well, if it does, it's not surprising for me, but, I mean, he's obviously proved himself. He's a very good player, but that one, I mean, to be honest with you, I haven't heard anything.
And Russian teams generally, are they net signers of players or net exporters of players?
One thing I can tell you right now, for Andrei Arshavin, obviously Barcelona made an official inquiry to buy him from Zenit, and his club Zenit, and I just last night I spoke with one of the Zenit directors, and he said that St. Petersburg club is very interested in Barcelona's Argentine forward Lionel Messi, and there's maybe a swap is in the works. So actually, this is you heard first on this program, because this is kind of
We always like to hear it first on this programme, so I'm glad you said that. We've got Cleo in Aldershot with us. Good morning, Cleo.
Good morning, friend.
Hiya.
Friend Dotun. Lionel Leon for Andy. Leon Sorom, the move to PSG has been put on hold because of they diagnosed a heart condition. Arsene Wenger said that obviously the last couple of medicals he hasn't been very thorough if it's not been detected. For El Legendino, reference Fluminense and LD, do you think the altitude played a little part in their magnificent win? They were 4-1 up at half-time. And for Costa Nova, my team Arsenal are being tracked by a Russian billionaire, Usmanov. Can you tell me some more about him?
Let's start with the Usmanov first of all, then.
Oh, well, he's a wealthy businessman. Actually, I think he was born and raised in Uzbekistan, as the former Soviet Republic in Central Asia. And he's kind of like Abramovich is one of the people that close to Putin, and he deals in metals and all the other industries, and obviously he's a very rich man. And just a kind of footnote, his wife is the famous gymnastic coach, Irina Wiener, who kind of had many world and Olympic champions in rhythmic gymnastics. So that's kind of, well, and for him also, he in his prime time, he was a former fencer. I don't know how good fencer he was, but at least he's now a president of the Russian Fencing Federation, and last year he tried to become a president of the International Fencing Federation. He didn't succeed, but I think with all his money, I think it's just a matter of time before he becomes like president of the International Fencing Federation.
So with any luck, the Gooners could become a scrap metal company or owned by a scrap metal dealer, you know what I mean? Anyway, let's get... Well, it's true, isn't it, Cleo? You know, he's scrap metal, you know?
You're not going to Steptoe and Son.
Any old iron, any old iron. Anyway, so Tim, the LDU in Fluminense, was it the altitude what done it?
Well, 2,800 metres above sea level at Quito. It does make a difference, and Brazilian teams absolutely hate playing at altitude. It's hard for Brazilian teams with the way that they play these days, because the Brazilian teams love to throw the fullbacks forward, and it means that during the course of the game, those fullbacks, they're up and down the touchline, they're running 60, 70, 80 metres up and back again. And the problem at altitude, if you're not accustomed to the conditions, you do lose some of your physical capacity. It's a game where if you can slow the game down in midfield, you'll do better. But Brazilian teams don't tend to do that these days. They play at the rhythm of their fullbacks. So it is difficult for the Brazilian teams. In fact, the Brazilian teams in this year's Libertadores, they tried to ban altitude. They petitioned Geneva, and they petitioned this, that, and the other, and they were slapped down. So as well as the physical problems that they have there's also the psychological factor that the Brazilian clubs really, really don't like it. And certainly Fluminense just didn't seem to turn up for the first half and were 4-1 down, and you were thinking, well, if altitude really does kick in the second half, we could be looking at 7-1 or something. But they came back into things in the second half. They got a goal to pull it back to 4-2. That goal could be absolutely vital. And then right at the end, their goalkeeper pushed the ball onto the bar and just managed to clutch it. So it's 4-2 and not 5-2, only 2 goals down and not 3 goals down. And with a full Maracanã stadium behind them on Wednesday, they fancy their chances. No away goals rule for the return match, but there is extra time. So if Fluminense, after the 90 minutes, are leading by a 2-goal margin, we go into extra time, they've got an extra 30 minutes. So Fluminense will think that they've got a long, long time in which they can pull 2 goals and maybe even get more than 2 goals in front and win that title. So it's perfectly poised for what should be a terrific end to this year's Libertadores.
And the first part of your question for Andy again, Cleo?
Yeah, about Lilian Thuram. He was supposed to sign for PSG, but in the medical, they detect a heart condition, and unfortunately his younger brother was killed for the same thing in a basketball game. What does Andy think of that?
That's right. I think it's sad, but from a global perspective of Thuram's potential move to PSG, I don't really understand what he's going to get out of it, to be perfectly honest. It's clear he's winding down. He's been a terrific servant for France and all his clubs too. But I understand why PSG would want to sign him, because of course they're starting again. They want to build a team, a squad, an atmosphere with more stability. But really, with him, he's played 120 times for France. But now it's clear he's coming to the end anyway. His level significantly dropped with Barcelona. He wasn't great in the run-up to the European Championships for France. He wasn't great during the European Championships. And I'm not really sure what he's got left to prove. I'd almost rather we sort of left it as it is and remembered him as the great player who played for Juventus and France for so many years in the late 90s and early 21st century.
Wenger's suggestion that a lot of these medicals weren't thorough enough, it wasn't picked up. I myself had a heart condition just recently diagnosed. I've been walking around for 40-odd years with a hole in my heart. What do you think of that?
You're asking Andrew to be a medical student now.
Not medical, but
I'll do my best.
Just comment on Mr. Wenger's...
oh, sorry, yeah, of course.
Andrew's too young to remember Asa Hartford. Do you remember Asa Hartford?
Yeah, West Bromwich Albion. West Bromwich Albion, remember that was? No, you don't remember it, Andy.
Don't I?
No, I remember him from those picture cards that we used to get with the chewing gum, with the flat bit of chewing gum in. But you don't remember
I think
that, do you?
I think it's encouraging that obviously various problems over the last couple of years, Phil O'Donnell being the most recent tragic case, that people are picking up on this, and there's obviously a greater vigilance nowadays. No, I think that's good. It's something that's got to be more thoroughly checked out, especially with the increased physical demands on players these days.
Cleo, thanks very much. Andrew in London, good morning. Mr. Jen.
Morning. Thank you all for having me on. I just wanted to ask a question. I'm a Man City fan, and I have seen today that we are likely to be completing the signing of the Brazilian Joe. I was just looking at it thinking it's quite a lot of money for a player that I personally hadn't heard much about, and I wondered if you guys could help me out with a bit of information on him.
I think the one called the Wikipedia could probably tell you a thing or two.
First, I'm going to kick this all the way over to Moscow for Gennady, because Joe, obviously, I've got lots to say about him, but Gennady is clearly much more up-to-date on him because he's been playing for the last few years for CSKA.
Yes, quite right. I mean, obviously, the minute he came to the Russian league, and again, not many people knew who he was, and obviously he was a very young player, he still is, but he impressed right away. He kind of almost scored a goal per game, and he would have been the Russian League top scorer last season, if not for his injury. And then again, this season, he wasn't maybe not scoring as many goals, but still, I mean, he's certainly proved that he's probably going to be, when he matures and develops into kind of his mid-20s, maybe one of the world's best players. So certainly, I don't want to say, I mean, the price is right or the money is right, but certainly, I mean, he's one of the top young talent in the world today.
I like him a lot. I remember talking about him on this very show way back in like 2003, 2004 or something, calling him Brazilian football's answer to J-Lo with one letter less. He was pitched into the Corinthians team. Now, Corinthians is a huge team. They're in the second division now, but they were in the first when he was there. It's the second most popular team in Brazil. He was pitched into the Corinthians team at the age of 16. And he himself said, that one day he was collecting those football stickers, as we did with Asa Hartford, and then the next day he was one of those football stickers. So it all happened very, very early for him. It was hard for him to play for Corinthians because the fans were getting on his back a little bit. They were expecting a lot from him when he was only 16, 17. But I liked him right from day one. He's a beanpole striker, left-footed. I like the versatility of his game. You can play up to him, back to goal. He's quick enough for you to play behind the defensive line for him.
And very agile as well.
Yeah, stylish, has a nice left foot. Sometimes I wonder a little bit about his finishing. He doesn't score perhaps quite as many goals as his ability might do. But good news for Manchester City fans, I think, is that I know that a former Manchester City idol at centre-forward, Niall Quinn, likes him because I had the pleasure of working with Niall Quinn This is going back 3 years ago now when he was in Brazil very briefly, and he'd just seen a game of Corinthians, and the one he singled out for praise was young Joe. Now, obviously, Niall Quinn knows a fair bit about playing centre forward. So I think with the progress that Joe has shown at CSK in European football, he's shown that he can adapt to that. He clearly is worth a move to the English Premier League, and I think this is good news for Manchester City fans. I think he's a very, very interesting and a promising striker indeed.
That's good.
Can I add just one more thing? And I think it's a good move for Manchester City because they have a large Brazilian kind of connection there as well, and will just use his move into English Premier League and will help Joe. And what same thing happened here in Moscow when he started playing for CSKA. They had four Brazilians, and he kind of fitted right away, right well, and played very well with another Brazil striker, Wagner Love.
Makes a big difference. I agree, Gennady. You had a point there, Andrew, you were going to make?
I heard him in cap once by the Brazilian team. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. He was in the squad for a couple of friendlies just over a year ago. When they came to England, he was in the squad, and then he came off the bench for a friendly that they played against Turkey in Germany a couple of days afterwards. Then he went to the World Youth Cup with the Brazil team, and he didn't score a goal. He didn't really boost his national team chances there. He didn't play. He wasn't a disaster, but the ball just wouldn't go in for him. But he's certainly a player that the current national team coach Dunga rates highly, and this is an excellent move for him because there's far more exposure of the English Premier League in Brazil than there is of Russian football. So his games will appear if he gets in the Man City first team. So it's a boost for his prestige, and it can only help his international chances.
Andrew, thanks very much. Dave in London, good morning.
Hello, mate. All right?
Yeah, very well, thanks very much. You got a question for Jim, yeah?
Yeah, I was reading in the paper a couple of weeks ago that West Ham are supposed to be, we're looking at, I believe it's a Brazilian right-back called Gaucho or something, and I've just heard nothing about him. Just wondered if you knew who it was and what he was like.
No, I don't. No, I don't know who this right-back is. No, any more details from anyone out there? Please get them in.
Yeah, it's in one of the papers a couple of weeks ago. My sort of boy pointed it out, and I'd never heard of him either. So another Alan Kirbysley boring signing, I suppose.
Is it Gaucho or something like that?
Pardon?
Gaucho, maybe?
Gaucho would be a name. Gaucho is a state of Brazil, and a lot of players have that name. Like, for example, Ronaldinho in Brazil, he's known as Ronaldinho Gaúcho. Gaúcho is people from the south of Brazil.
I'm just worried he's going to turn West Ham into Charlton, that's all.
Well, Alan Kirbysley, when he took over at West Ham, there was a line there from Alan Kirbysley that he said the crowd was shouting for Tevez, and Kirbysley said apparently that he didn't know who Tevez was. Which was astonishing, given the fact that Tevez had just played a World Cup for Argentina.
Yeah, so he signed Nigel Quasi at the same time, didn't he?
Right. So, we hope that Alan Kirbysley has genned up a little bit on world football since then.
Okay. Thanks anyway.
Yeah, Dave, thanks a lot for that call. I've just returned from my trip to Brazil. You might remember I emailed you, Tim, over the last few months. Saw both of Brazil's recent World Cup qualifiers. Thought the atmosphere is in Asuncion. Is it Asuncion?
That's right, capital of Paraguay.
Right, yeah, Asuncion was superb, but was disappointed by the lack of noise in Belo Horizonte. I paid 200 reals, 65 quid for a ticket to the game at face value. Was this an average price? And that's more than they charge at Wembley. Does this explain the lack of atmosphere? Are Brazil being watched by the Prawn Sandwich Brigade? Bought a ticket to the game in Paraguay for a tenner, twice face value, says Asif.
I think that's a really good point. I've taken people to Brazil games in the past, and they've always been disappointed. It's a different kind of public that goes to the national team. A different kind of public from the week in, week out football public. It tends to be people who kind of go in search of a party. And that game, the Brazil-Argentina game in Belo Horizonte, it was kind of organised as a party. It was the state Minas Gerais trying to make a claim to stage the opening game in the 2014 World Cup. There was a rock band doing a show before the game. There was another rock band doing a show at half-time. There were light shows and all the rest of it. Expensive ticket prices, so it is the Prawn Sandwich Brigade. And there's one massive difference between a football match and a party. Now, parties don't have an opposition. So that frustration from the crowd that have gone along, that gone along expecting the fireworks and a party and then don't get it, then they can be very quick to turn against their side and very intolerant of their side. It's a very different atmosphere, I think, from week in, week out normal club game in Brazil.
From Mohammed in Oldham, Andy, Liverpool expect to sign Andreas Dotun next week. What are his qualities, and do you think he'll do well?
I think he will do quite well. It's interesting because, of course, their other signing this season, this close season so far, has been a fullback, Philip Dagen, for Borussia Dortmund. What both have got in common, both De Sena and Dagen, they're both attacking fullbacks, and I think this is encouraging from hopefully the way Liverpool are going to play next season, building on the attacking players they bought in Torres and Babel last season, a more aggressive forward approach. De Sena can also play left midfield. He's very physically strong. Actually, his debut for Italy, he played on left midfield as well, so he can mirror what Dagen's doing on the other side, and hopefully there'll be some great football to come from them next season.
Gilberto Silva is a lot more silky than Tim likes to admit, says TP.
He's garbage. It's a disgrace. It breaks me heart. And people say, what have you got against him? I think he's a terrific bloke. I think he's a lovely fellow. It's such a shame that he ruins his friendship by playing football.
Gennady, from Marky Liverpool, let's leave it there for now, if you don't mind.
Leave it there.
Yeah, Marky Liverpool says, do you think Pavlyuchenko has played well this year? And would he have played if Pogrebnyak would have been fit?
Well, actually, Pogrebnyak was Russia's number one striker going to the European Championship, and actually, I wasn't there, but the reporters who were there kind of felt that Pavlyuchenko was a bit down on himself as he wasn't picked as a number one striker. And the minute Pogrebnyak went down with his knee, kind of Pavlyuchenko became more sure of himself, and that played a big role obviously for him. So probably you could have seen him on the bench most of the time and coming in as a probably second-half substitute if Pogrebnyak was fit.
Angie, we've had a couple of people asking whether you still have the hump with me after last week, because you might remember at the end of last week's programme I had to embarrass you because of your youth. Do you remember that?
Well, what I do remember is the lawsuits in the Post, Dotun.
Okay. Who is this Dotun geezer that you keep talking about?
What on earth are you apologising for? I would love to be embarrassed because of my youth. It doesn't happen anymore.
But both Simon and Dale want me to ask you again if you can name the England 66 team.
I can, but I shan't out of principle.
Right.
Okay. France 84 Euro team. I'll do that after the news if you want.
It's not quite England 66, is it?
I'm a European football expert, and you said pre-Soviet.
Yeah, well, yeah, this is true. Finally, someone mentions the player of the tournament, Marcus Senna. He gives the creative players license to roam, but he's much more than just a defensive midfielder. He scored a penalty against Italy, and in the Sweden game, he drove Spain forward when some of his teammates had cried enough, says Gary in London. Is that how it was, Andy?
Yeah, and of course he's got a terrific long-range shooting record as well. He scored twice from the halfway line last season.
This is for Gennady from Yasin in Newcastle. I studied in Moscow in the 1980s, and my favourite team at that time was Spartak Moscow. One particular player whom I loved to watch was Fyodor Cherenkov. Could you tell me, please, where is he now? What does he do?
Oh, well, obviously, as he had some kind of mental disease. I mean, he would go kind of on and off, even in his playing days. That was the reason why he wasn't used that much for the Soviet national team, because the national coach Valery Lobanovsky from Dynamo Kiev, I mean, for his liking, he always used physical tough players, and Cherenkov was a skillful kind of player, more in the mold of Andrei Arshavin. Nowadays, he's just he plays for Spartak old-timers team, and I think that's the only way he supports himself. And I think also from time to time the club kind of gives him some money to support himself. Also, I think he had personal kind of problems. He divorced his wife, and his car was stolen, something like that was in the papers. So he at one point he was kind of very, very sick, and then in recent years he is looking much better.
As much as, I love and respect my colleagues on this programme, sometimes they just don't get it, do they, Tim?
Go on.
Andy, sometimes they just don't get it, do they?
Okay.
Gennady, sometimes your colleagues just don't get it, do they?
It happens.
It happens. It can't happen to the gent. You can't stop the gent from coming on the World Football Phone-In. He's part of the furniture. Can I say once and for all, when the gent calls, put him on. Already Dale has sent a text saying, we haven't heard from the gent for the last couple of weeks. Is he all right? Of course he's all right. Gent, are you okay?
I'm right here, Dotun. Thanks very much.
So, just to explain this, just so that my colleagues will understand, and so that they can hear your accent, your voice, and they know it's you.
Well,
Can you tell
Somebody mistook another Andrew, very nice chap, I'm sure.
He was, yeah.
For the gent.
I know. Well, it happens every now and then. Every now and then it happens.
Is my fan club growing? How many have I got now?
I think it's about 5, but it's growing every day.
Absolutely
almost
splendid.
as many as Tim's. He's got 365.
Well, goodness me, 365. Anyhow, good morning to you, Dotun.
I need one for the leap year.
I'll have that one.
You go.
And good morning to the three experts. Dotun, a little bit of domestic. Have I got time before the news, or shall I hang on?
Oh, well, I'll tell you, some people have been texting me, taking the mickey out of that South American team in South London called Charlatan.
Yeah.
But we have to talk. I mean, it's a World Football Phone-In, so let's talk about this South American Charlatan.
Right. Well, a bit of domestic business. I'm very surprised because I would think that supporters of that South American team in SE7 are manly, proper men, and not like the sissies who support Manchester United or Arsenal or Tottenham even.
I'm going to have to give you a yellow flag for that. You know that we're not allowed to abuse them, even though they are sissies. We're not allowed to say it.
No, but I'll tell you what I want to ask the expert. But then I've got a question for Tim concerning South American footballers. Our supporters at the Charlton should be big, tough guys, and I was very disappointed to hear last Sunday a very famous supporter of Charlton admitting to his posh friend Hexabar that he liked reading romantic novels by Jane Austen and the Bronte sisters. That's some sort of mistake, surely. It's got to be recounted next time he talks to her. And say he'll never read a romantic novel again. What do you reckon?
That's the end of my romance. Yeah, put it that way. That's the end
now,
of it.
after that, I've got a question for Tim.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, Tim.
Hiya.
Couple of players I've never heard of, but recently I read that Portsmouth are after a chap by the name of Marcelo Matos, a Brazilian, at the moment at Panathinaikos, and then another chap called Edison Cavani, a Uruguayan, West Ham are after him, who plays for Palermo. Can you update us on either of those?
Yeah, Cavani was one of the stars of under-20 football last year in South America. There's a little bit of Batistuta in him. He's a tall, strong striker. He works ferociously hard, really cracks the ball in, has done very, very well in Italy with Palermo, and with his physicality, you tend to think that he would be someone who could do well in European football, in English football. He's done well with Palermo. I think would do well for West Ham. Marcelo Matos is a tall but fairly limited Brazilian central midfielder. He's more, to be honest, of a clogger than someone who can create. And if Harry Redknapp is interested in him, he's someone to shut down the midfield and get the other players playing, rather than someone who's going to be a creative force himself. In a similar mould to, say, Marcos Senna, the Brazilian who's playing for Spain at the moment, but nothing like as good for me. So, to be honest, I think he's a fairly ordinary player, and it's quite sad, I think, if English football has to import someone like that. I would hope that English football would be able to produce its own Marcelo Matos and not have to import fairly ordinary workaday central midfielders.
Joe in Rossendale, good morning.
Good morning, how are you?
I'm very well, appreciate the call. You've got a question for Tim, yeah?
Yeah, it's a bit, take it out of the Premiership for a little while. I'm a Burnley fan, despite my accent. And we've just signed, I think, our first South American ever, a goalkeeper from Peru called Diego Penny. And I was wondering if you knew anything about him.
Yeah, and he's played national team for Peru. He's not in the team at the moment, but I remember a terrific performance from him towards the end of last year against Brazil in a 1-1 draw. He's a big, blonde figure, a commanding goalkeeper who really he blocks the goal just because of his size. He's very, very, very tall indeed. So clearly, it's a different kind of football that he's going to face there. But you would think he's got the physical build to come out and deal with the crosses. And he's been a good goalkeeper in Peru at club level. He's been playing for one of my favourite teams, Colonel Bolognese. It's a fantastic name for a football team. And he didn't do badly at all in their Copa Libertadores campaign. They lost all their games. It was their first campaign. They lost all their games, but all by narrow margins. And he came through well. He came through the pressure of that competition fairly well personally. So I rate him reasonably highly. I don't think he's a world-class goalkeeper.
But at championship level...
These moves are always a gamble because you never know how the player's going to adapt. And also for the goalkeeper, there's the extra thing of language, because the goalkeeper is looking out. He has to be able to organise the defence. I remember myself when I first moved over here. This is 14 years ago now in Brazil. I was playing in goal for a mixed English-Brazilian side. My Portuguese wasn't great at the time. And there were times when I was thinking, this fellow over here, the fullback, have I got to shout instructions to him in English or Portuguese? Oh, how do I say that in Portuguese? And the ball was in the back of the net before I'd worked out the translation. So there are those factors for foreign goalkeepers. But I'm not against this move at all. I think he's a tall, commanding keeper who I'll be very interested in the service that he gives Burnley. But I think that there's every chance that he could be a good buy for the club.
I mean, I'm not sure what Steve Caldwell and Clark Carlisle's Spanish is like, but maybe they'll have to brush up a little.
Indeed. Perhaps that might be easier than him learning English. You don't know. Perhaps he already speaks it. I don't know. But as well as the language and the cultural things, new style of football, it's a fascinating move. And now you are appointed our Burnley correspondent to keep us posted with his progress next season.
Excellent. No problem at all.
Joe, keep us in touch with the progress. But thanks a lot, Joe. Appreciate that. 0500 909 693. 10 minutes of the World Football phone in to go. I've just got one thing to say to you, Andy.
Yeah?
Bow, wow, wow, yippee-yi, yippee-yay.
Where did that come from?
Well, you're a DJ, aren't you? You know where that comes from.
That's Snoop Doggy Dogg.
Yeah, exactly. What's the title of it?
That'll be What's My Name.
Yeah. And may I ask you what my name is?
Emmanuel Adebayo.
My first name. I just love the way you say it. Go on.
Would you prefer Emmanuel or Chevy?
Kieran in St Helens, good morning.
Morning to you guys.
Hi, mate.
First of all, I'd like to say that even though England aren't in the Euro 08, I've enjoyed it from sort of an independent point of view because I think you can sort of, absorb the games without getting, from my point of view, too patriotic and sort of heated. But I must say, what I noticed was I felt that France played very much like England. Over expectation, frightened of their own shadows, and just didn't perform. What do you guys think of that?
Well, let's take it one at a time. Gennady, what do you think of that?
I would have to agree. I think they did kind of a bit like looked a bit old and fragile and kind of like scared of their reputation. Kind of was put heavy pressure on them. I think.
Steady on, Gennady. Kieran didn't say that England were old, did you?
Exactly. I was going to pull him up on that, but I didn't want to interrupt.
But apart from that, yes.
But just to sort of deviate
but
from...
they may not be old, but they looked old. I mean, at least France.
I do agree with you on that subject. But another thought that's come to mind, and I'm reading between the lines here, is that there are comments going around that Wayne Rooney is not sort of the best person to portray football. I must say, I come from a rugby background where, they do treat, lack of discipline very strongly. And I agree with that. What do you guys think of that?
Let's leave that one aside, because we do tend to talk about football. And to be fair to, he's a married man now, and that's your opinion. And to be honest, Kieran, I frankly,
no, that's not my opinion. That's what
I know.
Someone in Parliament said that, didn't they?
But what do they know about football or football?
Well, I agree with you there.
But Kieran, the only reason
I can take up the France point if you like.
I want to come on to that. And the only reason why I'm saying let's move on from that is only because I don't think it's fair. The guy's not here, and we don't know what he's like in private. But anyway, let's talk about the France comparison with England. Andy.
Well, I think what's the interesting point, especially when we're mentioning age with France, is that the main problem has been Domenech's difficulty in assimilating the two generations. The generation who won the 98 World Cup and the 2000 European Championship, and the newer players, the 87 generation, who are coming through, your Benzemas, your Ben Arthurs, your Samir Nasris. That was the problem. I think France have had a bit of an identity crisis, and it sort of... It was going to take a disaster like this for them to have to definitively move on and put some real thought into structuring the future and moving forward, realising that those glories are in the past and they have to build a new dynasty from here on.
It may be interesting to see how they move on, if they can sort of be sort of very productive, where England have sort of sometimes, I wouldn't say been counterproductive, but sometimes been sort of... static, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting point, and I think where France do have the advantage, of course, is they're producing players. That 1987 generation is something to behold. You've got the players who are in the squad this time, Benzema, Nasri, you've got Ben Arthur to come, you've got Jeremy Menez of Monaco, you've got a lot of players there, and you've got to wonder where those sort of players are going to come from for England. I suspect the main difference is the fact that the French Academy at Clairefontaine celebrated its 20th year this year, and in those 20 years France have won stuff at every level. World Cup, European Championship, under 17, under 19, under 21, female European Championship, the lot. So basically, the sooner the FA can get this academy at Burton built, the better, I think.
Just changing countries, is it true that the Germans sort of hold a higher sort of qualification on coaching certificates than most other countries? Do you know much about that?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Well, like if someone is trying to gain a qualification to be a coach, I've been led to believe that Germany sort of the flag bearers, if that's the word to use, on that sort of subject. That they're the people that other guys should aspire to.
Well, certainly they're a lot stricter on the application of the pro licence. I mean, it came up again with Paul Ince becoming manager of Blackburn in the last week, that he's been given dispensation to study for that in the meantime, and that's part of his contract. That's not something that would happen in Germany. In Italy, there's a way around that. Of course, you saw that when David Platt took charge of Sampdoria, that they appoint a senior figure, and he's like a puppet for the guy who's actually the manager. But certainly, it's a lot more strictly applied in Germany.
Kieran, thanks a lot for the call. Tim, this is from Philip in Nottingham. What's this about Brazil not qualifying for the next World Cup? Did you say that, or where did that come from?
No, that might well be Philip who's been saying that for some time. And, well, at the moment, we're a third of the way through the qualifying campaign, and Brazil are in 5th position. Now, if they're there at the end of the qualifying campaign, they'll have to play off against someone from the CONCACAF region, Sean Wheelock's region, North Central America and the Caribbean. And they're playing very, very badly at the moment. But they were dreadful in 2000, 2001 and still managed to qualify for the World Cup and ended up winning that World Cup. So there are real problems with Brazil at the moment, and obviously almost all of them centre around Gilberto Silva. There are real problems there for Brazil at the moment, but there's a lot of talent coming through, and I wouldn't write them off. Not just of not qualifying for the World Cup, I wouldn't write them off even of winning in South Africa 2010. There are problems that need to be addressed.
It's inconceivable, though, that Brazil don't qualify for a World Cup. I wonder.
If they could be as terrible as they were in 2001 and still qualify, then I'm pretty confident that they can qualify for 2010. Although the overall standard in South America is rising, the traditionally weaker countries are getting stronger and stronger. And if you talk to some of the Brazilian players, past and present, they'll say qualifying for the World Cup has become even more difficult than the competition itself.
And having watched you on your internet starring role in Brazil, how Africa won the World Cup, I know that after Brazil failed to win the World Cup in 1950, people were committing suicide left, right and centre in Brazil. I wonder what the reaction would be in Brazil today if they failed to make a World Cup. So important as a game, though.
Yeah, and you have to wonder. It's something that's never happened. So we're in uncharted waters. But I still doubt that we're going to see it this time.
Okay. Rich in Shepton Mallet, good morning.
Hi there.
Hiya.
Right, guys, might seem like a really daft question. I'm a Bristol City fan. We're currently selling, or it's alleged we're selling Nick Carroll to Crystal Palace. Apparently doubling the transfer fee we paid for him. He's an Australian guy. We bought him from, I think, a team in Turkey. I can't remember exactly who it was now. But I've watched him this season, and I can't see as to why or how Neil Warnock can double his transfer fee in 6 months. Have you guys seen something that I haven't? Or
it's not Australian football night tonight, but you mentioned Turkey, and I wonder if Andy Bradshaw has seen him play in Turkey at all. Nick Carl, Andy?
I've seen nothing of him. The only reason I'm aware of Nick Carl's existence is because the speculation of him joining Crystal Palace is bumping AFC Wimbledon off the top headline in the South London press at the moment. So the sooner it gets completed, the better.
Rich, that's the best we can do for you tonight. I do apologise. That's terrible, mate.
Thanks for downloading from the BBC. To find other downloads or more information, go online.
bbc.co.uk/5live